everybody. Welcome to the Good Stories podcast. My name is Jody, here again with Stephen. Good morning, brother.
Good morning.
I have a little preamble before we start today's story because there are 3 different things that I want to mention to you, and now everybody gets to hear them.
Excellent.
Well, the first one you know about. So a few weeks back, we did The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which was great, and we had a listener, another Steve, write in. And I've passed his messages on to you, but I loved this one. So I wanted to read a correction from listener Steve and tell him thank you. I actually really enjoyed finding this out. So in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, you said that we never knew the story as to how the Lone Islands were part of Narnia. It's actually noted in the story that C.S. Lewis wrote, if I ever figure out where they came from, hear that story, I'll write it down. And we never found out. Well, that's not true. It is mentioned specifically in The Last Battle, the last book of the Narnia series. And so I'm just going to read a segment of it. There is a unicorn named Jewel talking to a girl named Jill. And this is part of it. He told how King Gale, who is 9th in descent from Frank, the first of all kings, had sailed far away into the eastern seas and delivered the Lone Islanders from a dragon, and how in return they had given him the Lone Islands to be part of the royal lands of Narnia forever. This unicorn is describing the history of Narnia, and the Lone Islands were part of it, and there was a dragon.
I was so excited about this. Thank you, Steve, so much for pointing this out to me because I just missed it. I've read The Last Battle many times, but I didn't remember that at all. And what a great story that it involves a dragon. Yes, I'm very, very pleased to have been redirected to that passage.
And he spells his name right.
Oh, there you go.
Just like you, with a PH. No offense, Stevens with a V. Just my Steven has the PH, and so he'd get mail to Stephanie Keck when he was a little kid, and I thought it was hilarious.
I could have been Little Miss America. I was invited to the pageant.
Many times. There was a lot of Little Miss America mail for you.
My siblings loved that.
Very funny. Anyways, thank you to Steve. The second thing I want to point out, we've also done Macbeth lately, and I didn't put a thank you at the end of that, but if you listened, there is an epic cackler. There is an epic witch cackle. And I don't want people to think that that was canned. That was created and crafted lovingly by our dear cousin Alyssa.
Thank you so much, Liz. That was awesome.
I think it's great. It just has the hint of jarringness to it to introduce the witches as something kind of off. But she did a fantastic job. So thank you so much. This is a family production, people. And then number 3, we have a new Patreon supporter, so a page turner. So thank you to Sophia for joining us and supporting us. And I've really enjoyed emailing back and forth with you, and I hope that continues. And we're just so glad that you're with us. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. All right, so then we will do our top 5 new download locations this week. So thank you for listening out there in Antelope, Oregon, Springfield, Missouri, Odessa, Texas, Hendersonville, North Carolina, and St. Louis, Missouri. It's a big Missouri week.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you. All right. For this episode, we are jumping into an epic. This one is often mentioned in parallel with other epics like the Iliad or the Odyssey, Beowulf. But this is the Irish epic tale of the Táin, the Táin Bó Cúailnge, or the cattle raid of Cooley. And right up front, I want to apologize for my pronunciation. So to all the people of Ireland, I am sorry. Please believe it's out of interest and enthusiasm. In my head, the words are pronounced quite beautifully, but they get fairly mangled when they come out of my mouth. And I don't know what it's supposed to be. So I have heard of this one as the Táin. So that's kind of what I'm going to go with. Stephen probably says it different than me too.
I will add my apologies, deep and sincere, because, Gaelic, I have no ear for it. I have no understanding of how far off I am, but the stories are so wonderful and so good that I can't help but engage. So, yeah, this is going to be painful to our Irish friends who actually have an opinion on pronunciation here, because mine is going to be rough. I, too, have heard it pronounced the Táin, and so that's normally the way I say it. But even in that very name, the cattle raid of Cooley, right? The Táin Bó Cúailnge, I mean, is the way I saw it kind of written. And in my translation of this, there's actually a whole chapter on pronunciation. There's an introduction on pronunciation. We should say that we are reading from different translations. Jody, I think you have kind of the modern classic one, right?
I do. Mine is translated by Thomas Kinsella.
Mine, I don't know where this came from, but it ended up on my shelf, and it's the version I know by the translator Kieran Carson. And it's wonderful, and so there'll be some differences and some comparisons. But in the pronunciation, there was one line that I took out from it because it soothed me. The line said, quote, "Old Irish orthography is covered by complex rules," end quote. At that point, I knew I was doomed, and so I accepted it and moved on. There are a couple things in my pronunciation you'll hear today. In that chapter, it says that when words are written with a B or an M, except when they're not, they are pronounced with a V sound. So there's going to be some ones that I probably bounce back and forth when I remember that and when I forget that, and, well, it's just going to be a wild ride. So buckle up.
But we'll try. We're always trying, I promise. But like I mentioned, the story is an epic tale. So I think the taste and feel of it is very different from almost everything else you might read. But things that are still known and respected after so many centuries, I think are worth paying attention to. And this one focuses on a very young hero who stands alone against an entire army. So let's hear it. Time for a story.
Queen Maeve of Connacht is talking one night with her husband, Alil. The two argue about who brought the most to the relationship, and they decide the only way to answer the question is to compare all their worldly wealth, then and there. When the count is complete, Queen Maeve is horrified to discover she is the loser by virtue of a great bowl that belongs to the king. In an attempt to even the account, she asks the men of Ulster for the loan of the famed brown bull of Cooley. When this request is rebuffed, she decides to take it by force. Unfortunately for Ulster, their warriors are stricken by a horrible curse, which leaves them incapacitated for a time and unable to defend their land and the bull. The only exception to the curse is the great warrior Cú Chulainn. He must single-handedly fight back the armies of Queen Maeve until his countrymen can recover and come to his aid. His epic deeds provide the material for the Táin Bó Cúailnge, the cattle raid of Cooley.
So this epic has, I think, like a lot of other epics, a lot of sub-stories to it. And there are things ahead of the story and kind of behind the story that I don't think we're going to talk on as much. But this is the cattle raid of Cooley. Spoiler alert, this one has been around a long, long time. So hopefully if you've heard of it or familiar with it. Truth be told, I had heard of it and I kind of knew the general plot. This is the first time I'd read it.
No, welcome.
So a first official read, and it is not really what I thought it was going to be when I picked it up.
Well, that might lend itself to our age recommendation for this. This is definitely heroic, epic, pagan literature with all that entails. So it is incredibly violent. It is very bloody. The entire thing is a sequence of fights. It is also fairly highly sexual. And so this is something that I would definitely limit in terms of children reading this. I think there are stories from it that can be paraphrased in wonderful ways and told to great effect. But if you're actually going to open the covers of the Táin, I think you should probably be a grown-up.
Yeah, even the essays and things I read about it, the stories are retold in a much gentler way. Things are skipped over, glossed over. There are very funny parts, I think, but yes, it is an older read. I don't know if I'm old enough, really. There's a lot of bodies hacked into multiple pieces, described in great detail. Very body, like a lot of sexual jokes about wood, swords, and things. So that's not the point nor the plot of it, but they're definitely in there.
Yeah, and so we are going to gloss over a fair amount of this too. I just don't think we can help it. I mean, to speak about this in kind of polite society, I'm not going to be quoting directly some of the stuff from it. And so what that could lead to is some shock from some readers. If they listen to this podcast, decide to pick it up and then say, oh my goodness, they forgot to mention this. Well, we're mentioning it now. So what this reminds me a little of, Jody, you remember growing up with me seeing many, many cut for television TV programs,
That
right?
is exactly what I was going to say. Yes. We have mentioned this before. The shock of watching something that was cut for television, but you didn't know it until you went to watch the real thing. Oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed. So in some ways, this is going to be the cut for television version of the Táin. I think the real thing is absolutely worth reading if you're that kind of person, if you're the right kind of person to be able to draw the jewels out of this. And there are jewels, or else we wouldn't be talking about it. But I do think it's worth that kind of warning ahead.
Agreed. How do you want to get into this one?
I think we should get in this by talking about the Ulster cycle. The Ulster cycle, or I've heard it called the Uliad, which is kind of a fun word, is a collection of tales. These are stories that come down about this specific region of Ireland. But through this region of Ireland, there's also connections to the rest of Ireland and to Irish history, full stop. Wonderful series of tales, and the Táin is the most important of those. It's the kind of the central one. There's a lot of these other stories that sort of build around it, but the Táin is the big one. We know this from literary sources, from manuscripts from the 12th to 15th centuries, and there is endless debate about when the tales actually took place. So generally it's thought to be somewhere around the time of Christ, actually. Somewhere around the 1st century is usually what I hear argued. But again, though, even with that, there are things like technology that shouldn't be there. And so kind of like the other epic tales, there's endless arguments about the Iliad, about the different armor and weapons and what time period does that associate with. We see that here. This is definitely, though, pre-Christian Ireland. This is definitely early Ireland. This is a warrior culture. This is a cattle culture. This is how wealth is determined, by cattle. So much of this warrior fighting is all based off these cattle raids. I mean, so many cultures. This has been kind of the early days in the way this sort of heroic formation occurred. And we see that here in really, really interesting ways.
So mine has a colophon. Can I start with the colophon, even though it's at the very end?
Please do.
Does yours have a colophon?
I do not recall a colophon.
So I had to look up what a colophon is. And so this is a vocabulary challenge for all of us today. A colophon is a brief statement at the end of a book, typically, that describes something about its physical creation, the artwork or the craftsmanship or the paper used, something about the making of it. So different than a copyright page, right? That would include a lot of technical details. A colophon, it comes from a Greek word, also colophon, but with the K, meaning something like finishing stroke. Okay, so mine, at the end, when it says, this is the Táin, the end, the writer or the translator ends it with, a blessing on everyone who shall faithfully memorize the Táin as it is written here, and shall not add any other form to it. But I, who have written this story, or rather this fable, give no credence to the various incidents related in it. For some things in it are the deceptions of demons, other poetic figments, some are probable, others improbable, while still others are intended for the delectation of foolish men. So this story is really a mashup, and it had multiple versions. Mine said that there's 2 kind of mushed together, although I read other things that said there were more, maybe 3.
I don't know. There's several different versions, though. I mean, it exists in parts, and there's a primary version. So every translator is going to take which versions they rely on most and kind of work it into their story.
Yeah, and they definitely mine have very different flavors. Some get very poetic and tell it kind of in this poetry back and forth, and other segments aren't like that at all. It was a little confusing because a guy who totally got killed earlier was back. But it's a retelling of the same 2 people battling, but a different version of it. And even inside of the single version of it, there were multiple tellings. It's like in some versions it says this, and in others this other thing. So with these things that began as oral tales, there's just so many versions because it grows in the telling, and that is evident when you read it as well.
The other thing that jumps out to me when I read this is how tied it is to the land, to the locality. So many of these stories, this random, bizarre, strange thing happens, even this minor thing, and they're like, oh, and that's why this hill is called this. Mm-hmm. That's why this creek is called this. And so there is just this deep, deep tie to the regions of Ireland. And for somebody who knows those, I can only imagine that would be wonderful and such an easier way to remember these stories. I mean, if you're walking along and you see this flat-topped hill that a warrior cut off with a sword, you're like, oh, I know that story and I know that hill.
Yeah.
And so there's some of those things that we don't get to experience reading it that the original hearers would have. And even I would think the modern Irish would be able to tie into that. And I think it would speak to a very, very deep part of them.
Oh, there's hundreds of locations. They're like, that's why this is called this. So that is intrinsically tied to this story. It seems very, it's folklore, but it's used to name their actual land. So to dismiss it as this old thing outdated, I think is entirely unfair because it's still tied to names and pieces of the land, which it's just really cool.
Yeah, that's such a great point. There is one part about this book, though, that is fairly dated that we should probably mention. I said this is a world in which cattle basically are money, right? That's how you determine who's wealthy or not. This is also a world where women are largely property, where women's role is as barter and as, pleasure, basically. And that will come through if you read this. And again, I just don't want anybody to be surprised by that. So to enjoy this book doesn't mean we endorse these sorts of roles, but it will come through quite a lot when we start talking about particularly some of the daughters of the king and queen.
Yeah. And yet the queen is basically the driving force behind this raid. She is a headstrong lady who does have power and free agency to do things. Mine starts, the chapter is called Pillow Talk.
Mine is The Pillow Talk and Its Outcome. And this is part of why I love this so much, because I've always remembered this. This is a mighty king and a mighty queen, Queen Maeve, which in mine is spelled M-E-D-B. So this is one of those examples of the B being a the sound. And these are powerful royals. They are wealthy. They have all these family connections to the High King of Ireland and to all these other kings and queens. But yeah, the opening is them just in bed chatting. They're just talking to each other, and it evolves into this friendly competition and argument.
Yeah. So does your book have any stories ahead of the Pillow Talk, or is it the beginning?
That's where mine starts.
So there is a very short story that leads into my beginning chapter that I think I want to mention because I see parallels. It has a very long title, The Quarrel of the Two Pig Keepers and How the Bulls Were Begotten. Okay. The bulls are very important in the Táin story. So in this one, there's these two pig keepers that are friends. I'm just going to tell it quick. Two pig keepers that are friends, but then, and they'll have their pigs go to the other's location to fatten up, and they're equal in all the ways. But then people start talking, like, our pig keeper's better, his pig keeper's better, and it hurts feelings. They become shapeshifters. So for years at a time, they will change their shape together and yet be matched. So for a year, they spend time fighting as ravens, just squabbling, and people are like, what are with those birds? But they're even as ravens. Then they change, and some said seals, mine said whales. They spend a year or two under the sea, underwater, battling to see who comes out on top. Still even. They spend years as stags, then they shapeshift to warriors, and I love the names. There's warriors, then they're phantoms, then they're dragons. And I think the names for the warriors are good because they're such a great dichotomy, point, counterpoint. They're called Point and Edge. As warriors, those are their names. Mm-hmm. As phantoms, they are Shadow and Shield. And yet every time they shapeshift, they're still equal. And it's this power play with no ending. They keep being exactly equal. As from phantoms, they turn into dragons. Mine did not mention names for the dragons. And then from dragons, in a big twist, they turn into maggots. And the maggots are consumed and develop these two bulls. There's the white bull, Finnebach, and the brown bull, again, sorry for the pronunciation, Cú Chulainn. So these bulls become very pivotal in the Cú story. And that's where they came from. These two pig farmers who were friends, but who, through competition and strife and fighting, developed these two amazing creatures that then also become a source of strife and fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So really interesting how it repeats itself, very cyclical in nature. And it's called the Ulster cycle, which indicates a cyclicalness. And I think most epics do have a fair amount of that repeated pattern. And you could see it here with the pig keepers and the bulls that were begotten from it.
Well, I love that. That's fascinating. And that then does lead into this cycle. And I'm just going to read the first couple lines here of my translation of the Táin. One night, when the royal bed had been prepared for Ailill and Maeve in Cruachan Fort in Connacht, they engaged in pillow talk. It's true what they say, girl, said Ailill. Well-off women, wealthy man's wife. True enough, said the woman. What makes you say it? Just this, said Ailill, that you're better off now than the day I took you. I was well off before it, said Maeve. If you were, I never heard tell of it, said Ailill, apart from your woman's assets that your neighbor enemies kept plundering and raiding. And then this back and forth keeps going. They throw out their lineage, they throw out the wealth and everything they brought to it. But it's all fairly pleasant. I mean, Maeve is talking about how many suitors she had, how many men could have been king with her as queen. But she says, I turned them all down. I asked a more exacting wedding gift than any woman ever before me. A man without meanness, jealousy, and fear. That's a pretty great line. But when you walk through what she really meant by that, it doesn't come off quite as great. If he were mean, we'd be ill-matched because I am generous in bestowing gifts and favors. And it would be a disgrace if I were more generous than him, but no disgrace if we were equal, both bestowing freely. If he were cowardly, we'd be ill-matched, for I am powerful in warfare, fight and fray. It would be a disgrace if I were forcible than him, but no disgrace if both of us are forcible. Nor would it do for my husband to be jealous. I never had one man without another waiting in his shadow. I got the right man, yourself. So we learn things about the queen here. We learn that she's generous. We learn that she's mighty in battle. And we learn that she's a bit lusty.
More than a bit.
It'll come up again in the story.
It's a good demonstration, I think, of a husband and wife talking in bed where it starts friendly and then it kind of degrades. Actually, I'm better. No, I'm better. Did you ever hear or see Annie Get Your Gun, the musical?
No.
It's the song, Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better.
Yes,
back
I know
and
that
forth.
song.
That's what this is to me, where they're comparing and it's all friendly until it's not. There's an edge to it and they pull out everything.
Yeah, it's like they shove all their stuff into the middle of the room to compare it. It cracks me up. There's sort of an adolescent tone throughout this work. This idea of kind of an, oh yeah, you know, this I'm going to show you up. I mean, it's hilarious. But the thought of them just, all right, get up. We're going to prove this right now. And they start grabbing their money. They start grabbing their clothes. They start grabbing their wealth. And then they get their servants involved. And it's one for one, kind of like the pig keepers, right? It's one for one until finally the bull. But among Ailill's cattle was a prize bull that had been a calf of one of Maeve's cows. Finnebach his name, the white-horned. Not wanting to be reckoned as a woman's asset, he had gone over to the king's herd. And to Maeve, it was as if she hadn't a single penny, for there was no bull equal to Finnebach among her cattle. Several points about that jump out at me. One, that should be Maeve's cow, right? That was a calf to one of her cows, but didn't want to be ruled by a woman. So it's now numbered among the king's assets. That's interesting. And then the other component of it is that single bull that she can't answer for. Well, it's like she's got nothing. I mean, it's a fairly petty response to this competition.
As you say, this is pagan literature. It reminded me of the sheep owner in the Bible, where if he loses one, you know, if he has the 99 in the pen, the good sheep herder, the good shepherd's going to go find the lost one. This is like an angry opposite to that, where she is willing to throw the dice, gamble everything for this one. She's going to get it back.
But she didn't really even care about it until there was this competition with her husband.
Right.
So it's not for the value of the cow. It's not the bull itself that she wants. She just wants to at least be equal to her husband.
Right. It's a rank and a pairing, this one-for-one relationship because it's become a fight. That's what this is a married fight, and she can't let him win. I assume he would have done the same in her place if she had come out a bull ahead. And this is a special bull. I understand.
Yeah, it is very much a special bull. But what also cracks me up about this is that she doesn't actually want that bull back. She wants a bull to match it. I mean, she had talked about how important it was for them to be equal in those things when he couldn't have meanness, jealousy, or fear, right? They needed to be equal together. So she wasn't really even trying to one-up him. And so in this case, her taking the bull back, that would just keep the argument going.
Yeah.
Because then she would be in charge and then he would need something to kind of up his standing. And so her solution is different. It's not to take this bull back from her husband. It is to go and borrow a bull from somebody else. Not even to take it, not to steal it, not to own it, just to borrow a bull because there is somebody else who has a bull equivalent to the white-horned bull. And this is the great brown bull. This is the whole point of this entire story. This is owned by somebody named Darama Fiachna. And so this is a king up in the lands of Ulster who has this bull. And she sends messengers to him basically saying, let me borrow it for a year. I just want it for a year. Well, I'll just read it. And she offers him some really impressive things in response. Take yourself there, Mecharath. Mecharath is her messenger, said Maeve, and ask Dari for a year's loan of the Cú Chulainn. And when the year is up, I'll give him back the brown bull and 50 heifers to boot. And you can make him another offer, Mecharath. If the people of those borderlands begrudge the loan of the pride of the herd, the Cú Chulainn, let Dari himself bring me the bull, and I'll grant him a piece of the smooth plain of Ai as big as all his lands, and a chariot worth thrice 7 bondsmaids, as well as the friendship of my own thighs. Again, it's a grown-up story.
Mine says her friendly thighs. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, Dara thinks this is a fantastic idea. I mean, all this wealth, the friendship of the queen. I mean, yes, absolutely. And so he's on board. So for a little while, it looks like everything is going to go well. And then alcohol enters the picture.
Alcohol and gossip.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a king. What is he? The guy. The Ulster guy who has this bull is informed that if you don't say yes, she's just going to come take it anyway. And that bothers him. I think rightfully so. And he actually goes back on his decision. He's affronted that they would take by force something that he was about to freely give. Not freely, for the reasonable payment, he thought. Mm-hmm. And so they return with the message that he said no.
Yeah, it turns out that the drunken messengers were right. She would just take it anyway if he said no, because her line is this. Well, they're all talking and people are trying to explain what's going on, and she just shuts it down. There's no need to iron out the knots on this one, Macross, said Maeve, for it was known that if the bull were not given willingly, he would be taken by force, and taken he shall be. And that is the end of the pillow talk in my version. And my version now moves into book 2, which is just called The Táin Begins.
Yeah, they generate this large army, and it was interesting to me that her husband, the king, supports it. He's part of this army. He goes with her to take this bull that seemingly the only reason they're going to take is so that this almost silly feeling argument between them is satisfied, that they are then again equal. So perhaps he likes this about his wife, that she wants this equality in rank and position and power, because he's there. He doesn't play a huge role, but he is ever present among the battles.
Well, he is not mean, he is not jealous, and he is not fearful. And so that plays into this entire story. And yeah, they muster an army. And we're going to be using several terms kind of interchangeably. And I'm curious, I can't remember how Thomas Kinsella translates some of these. But when we're talking about Maeve and Ailill's forces, we'll often refer to them as the army of Connacht, because that's what they're the king and queen of. Or sometimes it just gets referred to as the Irish army. And then sometimes it gets referred to as Maeve's army. And so these are all equivalent, right? This is a great host of people that they are gathering together. But what's fascinating is they are fighting against what is going to be the Ulstermen. So Ulster. And the land of Ulster is still a thing. And again, this is the Ulster cycle. That is the forces that that Maeve's forces are going against. But within Maeve's forces, you have some exiles from Ulster. Some of their mightiest warriors are from the land of Ulster themselves, but they are in exile. And in this chapter, there's this beautiful description as they're describing these hosts marching in. It reminds me a lot of the catalog of the ships in the Iliad. I mean, this description of these different forces. And they go into great length describing the exile Cormac. So Cormac in mine. And it's interesting because there's actually a footnote in mine that says, yes, Cormac was an Ulster exile, but this seems to actually confuse him with the character that's going to play the most important role of these exiles for the rest of this, a man named Fergus MacRoic. Fergus, we learn, was actually a king of Ulster. And this is one of those stories that people listening to this originally would have known. They would have known his background. He's a mighty warrior, a great king, but he was deposed by the current ruler in a very fun story named Conchobar. And so Conchobar is the current king of Ulster, but Fergus was the king. But this also explains why Fergus has ties to the Ulstermen, why he's friendly with many of them, and why he has insight. And it allows us to learn about the warriors and the people in the land of Ulster from an insider perspective from this exile who is with Maeve's army. But I think in this chapter, what I found was the most interesting part was actually not a warrior at all. It's a druid, and it is a prophetess, a seer named Fedelm.
What is the deal with oracles?
What is the deal with oracles?
Line from a prior episode, but I love it. I thought of it throughout this book, actually. But one note before you get there, I know people who love like Game of Thrones and the heraldry, the insignias, the uniforms, and how detailed those are described in books like Game of Thrones. That happens here because this is 4 provinces of Ireland. This is a massive army. The numbers kind of come and go for how many are killed, so a little unclear.
Yeah, and if we didn't trust the numbers in Plutarch, this one goes to just a whole nother level on that.
But the 3rd troop comes up, and it says they wore purple cloaks and red embroidered hooded tunics reaching to their feet. It describes their hair and their weapons, what they look like, because these are each kind of a separate people inside this main group, but they're going to fight together for this bull. But I think if you like that kind of visualization of the army gathering, this one does a pretty good job. But yes, this oracle, this prophetess named Fedelm.
And again, the visualization, the richness of this story is wonderful. It's one of the things I love about it. And, well, for example, the description of this woman. As they made to go back to camp, a young woman appeared before them. She had yellow hair. She wore a dappled cloak with a gold pin, a hooded tunic with red embroidery, and shoes with gold buckles. Her face was broad above and slender beneath, her eyebrows dark, and her black eyelashes cast a shadow halfway down her cheek. And it just goes on describing this beautiful woman who's just truly striking. And the queen goes up to her, and this is so good. "What is your name?" said Maeve to the young woman. "My name is Fedelm, one of the women poets of Connacht." "Where have you come from?" said Maeve. "From learning poetry in Alba," said the young woman. "Have you the second sight?" said Maeve. "I have that too," said the young woman. "Look for us then, and see how our expedition will fare." The girl looked, and Maeve said, "For our army, Fedelm, what lies ahead?" Fedelm replied, "I see it crimson. I see it red." Oh, that's so good.
The queen says, "It can't be true." She refuses to believe it. The girl repeats this phrase 4 times. And the queen says, no, there's always blood on a battlefield. It can't be our fight or our loss. But mine calls it the light of foresight. Have you the Imbas Forestnai, the light of foresight? Yes, I have. And after she tells, "I see it crimson, I see it red," 4 different times, she adds something. The prophetess says, "I see a battle, a blond man with much blood about his belt and a hero halo round his head. His brow is full of victories. She has this whole poem about this man. It says, his great valor brings to mind Cú Chulainn of Merthyr, the hound of Culann, full of fame. Who he is, I cannot tell, but I see now the whole host colored crimson by his hand. I don't think the queen nor king knows the name Cú Chulainn. It's not clear that they do, but that exile king, Fergus, he knows Cú Chulainn.
He knows him. And in fact, they're related. There are these complex webs of fosterage that indicate what the relationship should be between these warriors and these crews. And Fergus is, again, going to be the eyes that we get the insight into Cú Chulainn. And again, you talked earlier about how this is a combination of prose and poetry. So this is really the first poetry passage, and it keeps jumping back and forth between the two, I think to great effect. And this whole poem on this warrior, mine ends with blood spurts from soldiers' bodies released by this hero's hand. He kills on sight, scattering Data's followers and clan. Women wail at the corpse mound because of him, the Forge Hound. And the name, Cú Chulainn, it has a lot of that in it. The idea of the hound of this place, but also the idea of a forge hound. So dogs and hounds. And so there's all this wordplay that we can't really understand without knowing the Gaelic. But within the Gaelic, it must be just striking to hear.
Well, Maeve does not listen to any of this advice. Can't be true. And the army sets out, and it is told in great detail, actually, where they walk. Like I said, this tale is hooked to the land. And so they march through the land. It describes the territories. It describes the hills, the woods, the plains, where they walk as they pass through rivers and all these places until they approach the land of Ulster.
The other thing that happens in this chapter is we get the first mention of the King of Ulster. Again, this is Conchobar. And we get the first mention of the curse of the Ulstermen. And so it might be worth going into that just a little bit right now. So, and this is another one of those stories that I think comes from the Ulster cycle, but it would have been known to the people who read this story. You remember when we did the Eddas and we talked about the fact that there just wasn't that much known other than what's in the story? You have the story, you have the telling, but you don't really know all the details behind that. If anyway, Gaelic is even worse. If you try and look at these old Celtic gods and goddesses, because they factor so huge into the stories. I mean, the pagan mythology is embedded, it's underneath it, it's assumed, but we just don't know what it is. And people will speak with great confidence about it, but I'm not sure that confidence is earned. I mean, if you plug into Google some of these things, it'll tell you about the Merrigan, it'll tell you about the Bev, it will tell you about Macha, right? These goddess queens of battle. But again, I think a lot of that is kind of gleaned and pulled from these different stories. Well, one of these goddesses of battle is someone named Macha, M-A-C-H-A. But in other versions of the story, she's a great queen. But according to one of the stories, while she was pregnant, she was forced by the king to run a race. That seems very mean, when she's 9 months pregnant, to run a race. And so this goddess queen character then cursed the warriors of Ulster, that at any time when they were in need, meaning somebody was coming to attack them, the Ulstermen would be disabled by labor pains. The actual pains of giving birth would completely take them out of commission. And I've heard in some places it said it's for 5 days, others it's for a non-specific period of time. This book definitely goes more than 5 days. But this is the curse of the Ulster warriors. And that's a really important thing if there's an army coming into your land and all of a sudden all your warriors can't fight because you are feeling the pains of labor.
That was not specified in mine. So I had to go look up what are the pangs of Ulster, because they mention it and like, where are they? Their pangs are lasting a long time. Like, what pangs?
Yeah.
They have labor pangs for, mine says 9 days or some nondescript amount of time. And it does last in this, but it also sets up the story. For there is one warrior, a man of Ulster, a young man, he's 17 in this, who ends up defending the land himself because all the other warriors, they have a lot, I understand, but they can't show up. They're basically in labor.
Exactly. Which is hilarious. I mean, that's what I mean, though, by this being such a kind of an earthy book. I mean, because it'll bounce between these high deeds of heroism and magic and foresight and prophecy to this joke about these men giving birth, and therefore they can't fight during that time. I mean, it's goofy and actually pretty fun.
Yeah, you described it to me a little bit ago, and I think you're right. It's like a couple of college kids got together and like, it would be really funny.
And awesome.
And awesome.
Yeah.
And it flips back and forth.
During this first segment, though, we have really what it is the marching of the army of Maeve. So it's all these people she has gathered together, and they're going on. And it's fun because there's these little diversions. Because there's this whole diversion about a division in her army, this 3,000 strong men of the people of Galleon. And again, a lot of these are just regions of Ireland. These are tribes or people at the time. And so it's a way of them kind of sliding into the story. And this division is so awesome that Maeve wants to kill them all, because that would just be embarrassing to have this division being, as tight, as cohesive, as powerful as they are. It would take away the honor from everybody else. And so, again, her plan is to just kill them.
Yeah, the king says, that is a woman's thinking and no mistake. It's a wicked thing to say. She just wants to kill them.
Yeah.
They're too strong. She has this definitely an interesting perception of power. And maybe that was a thing for the time. If you can be overpowered, that is at great risk to you if you are a queen. So maybe there is more behind it. But the king basically talks her down. A couple of them do. Mm-hmm. And they end up dividing these forces. I'm like, oh, that's okay then. We don't have to kill them.
And I think that comes from Fergus, because Fergus is going to be such an important character. He's the foil. He's the wise exile amongst the army of Maeve. And he is given a really prominent role in leadership here as well. He's always near the king and queen. They're always asking him, who's that? Who's that? What's this place? What's going on? What's the story? And in this case, they actually trust him. They guide him to lead the army. And so the army is being guided up to Ulster through these different paths. And they start to notice that he seems to be going in a bit of a roundabout way, that he's not directly going as fast as possible. And Fergus eventually fesses up to this and says, my mind has not gone astray from homesickness. I just mean to put off the certain day when we shall meet Cú Chulainn. So again, he is not looking forward to this encounter because this warrior is so amazing that it's going to be a problem. And for reasons that aren't clearly stated within the story, he's an exception to the curse. So he's not having the labor pains. This is also where we do first meet this young warrior. And he has some commitments he has to partake in. He says he has given an oath to go visit Fedelm. Now, I don't know if that's the same seer as did the I See It Crimson, I See It Red, or if it's another one. But he said he'd given an oath to go see her, and he must do it. So he sees this army coming, but he decides he's going to go away. He gets criticized for that, and Mine does little aside saying that, yeah, he actually just went to sleep with her servant and things along those lines. But before he goes, he does a couple of things. The first thing he does is he warns all the men of Ulster to hide, right? They're no good for battle, has them hide. But then what he does is he starts to deploy these delaying mechanisms. When I first read this, the pillow talk was the first thing I remember from it. But this was where this really started to get cool. Because not only is he a warrior, which we're going to see repeatedly, he's a bit of a wizard. He is trained in the Druidic arts. He knows magic and he knows learning. And this is where we get the first use of the Ogham writing.
I had to look this up because it says before he left to go have his tryst, he places a challenge. It's a spancel hoop of challenge, which I think is like a wicker thing that they used in farming. But he uses this message and he fastens it into a stone on top of a standing stone. And apparently this is just customary. Like people knew what this meant. You read the message, it's a challenge. It means someone else has to do the same feat he did, accomplish the same thing, or they cannot proceed.
Yeah, and the feat is unbelievable. It says, Cú Chulainn went into the wood, and with a single stroke he cut a prime oak sapling. Closing one eye and using 1 foot and 1 hand, he made a hoop of it. So that is the deed that has to be done.
I could not do that.
No, well, neither can anyone in Maeve's army. And so Fergus is there reading this, and he warns them, and they're asking Fergus, why are you all waiting? And we're waiting, said Fergus, because of this hoop. There's an ohm message on his peg which reads, proceed no further unless a man among you can make a hoop like this from one tree with one hand. Anyone except my comrade Fergus. So Cú Chulainn knows Fergus just like Fergus knows Cú Chulainn. And again, this isn't something they can just ignore. Fergus makes this very clear. If you ignore this hoop and go past it, I swear that the great soldier who made it will find you, though you be hidden underground or in a locked room, and he will kill one of you before morning unless you make a hoop just as he did. So there's power to this act. It's not something that they can just ignore and go past. It's something that they either have to deal with it or they have to find another road. They have to find another path to follow.
It's the king who finds another way. And he says, we certainly have no wish to see one of our men killed so soon. They're not even to the battlefield yet in their mind. So if we go through the neck of that great forest there south of us, we needn't pass here. So they cut down a forest. They can't accomplish their feat. They can't go past where Cuchulainn placed this challenge. And so they cut down a forest, and it is now called the Hewn Place. This is one of those ties to the land. It's named for this challenge that they could not satisfy. They go a different way. They cut down a forest to do it.
Mm-hmm. And now forever is a geographical feature. It's something that people can point to, and it's associated with the story. Can we talk about ohm writing real quick? So ohm writing is spelled in mine O-G-A-H-M. I've seen it spelled O-G-M. I've seen it spelled lots and lots of different ways. But these are like straight line marks, usually on the edge of a stick, that are cut. There's like a central line, and they're cut to the right and to the left in different numbers. I have no idea how to read these, but there are people who do, and I just think it's amazing. There's all sorts of argument about where these came from and when they started. Generally thought that this didn't develop until after the Irish were introduced to the Latin alphabet. And then this was kind of their version. It's very similar to what we know about the formation of runes in the Norse world, where they saw the alphabet, said this is a good idea, and then came up a way for them to do it themselves. But you'll still see these. So I've only been in Ireland briefly, and it was a long time ago, but I loved it. And we were on the Dingle Peninsula, and there are still stones where you can see these ohm cuts in them. And so just phenomenal, and I think it's really, really cool.
Are they vertical or horizontal, or the mix?
The ones I saw were horizontal to the ground. So the stone was standing upright, and then there was a line drawn directly down the stone, or sometimes they'll do it on the corner. So the corner of the stone, if it's like a square stone, they'll have a line to the left and the right on the corner, and it would go down.
So you've mentioned druids before, and that we don't really know a lot about them. Was it because it wasn't written down, or is it because it was in languages like that they couldn't really read?
Several answers to that question. One is they're just really old. Two, they didn't write things down, as you said. And in fact, that was an important part of it. They felt that to write things down was to actually not really learn it. It wasn't to really understand it and know it. So it was only in their brains, which means when the Romans came and killed them, which they were very effective at doing, this was all gone. The whole system fell away. And so I think the lack of writing more than anything speaks to why we don't know much about them currently.
Yeah, because mine does use the phrase sages and druids, where the Irish soldiers, as they're meeting up, they bring their sages and druids with them. But it's that prophetess that, in mine, she's not called a druid.
No, and she's not in mine either. So I'm sorry if I gave that perception. But I think like most people, I tie a lot of this kind of magical world into the arts of the druids. Well, that hoop worked. And so this is delaying the army of Queen Maeve. And again, this is all really a delaying tactic. This one was especially important because Cú Chulainn had went away to spend the night with a woman. And so he comes back and he sees that the army has gone in this other way. And he laments that he let them pass, but he's starting to look and track what is going on with this enemy force. And this is where we first meet his charioteer. This will be an important character. Leg, how do you pronounce it?
Leg, yeah. Cuchulainn here, we get the first flavor of his self-confidence, because he sends his charioteer to reckon up how many soldiers march through, right? They're looking at the tracks. And Leg, his charioteer's like, I can't figure it. And Cahulann's like, I would if I looked. And it takes him a moment. And his charioteer gives him some grief, which I think is funny. They have this kind of back and forth. But Leg says, even you don't find it easy. And Cúailnge says, still, it is easier for me than you, with my 3 talents of sight and intellect and reckoning. I've made up a count now. There are 18 troops of 3,000 here, as I count them. But the 18th troop of 3,000 has been divided out among the whole army. He can tell about the troops that the queen agreed to have spread out. Somehow he can tell from the tracks in the ground what they've done. He has a complete reckoning of the army coming towards Ulster just from looking at the tracks. Very good.
Yeah, he is, at every stage, he will be the epic hero. And we're going to learn more about him in the next book. But first, we're going to see one of Cú Chulainn's first great act of arms. Now, there are so many combats in this story, so many duels and battles. We are only going to touch on a couple of them. I mean, in my notes for this, I have frequently written, and then CC killed a whole lot more men. I mean, because it
a lot more men.
But this is the first one. And so I do want to talk a little bit about this one. So because this is going to be another Ohm writing. This is going to be another magical act. He finds a split tree. So think like a slingshot, right? With 2 forks coming up. And with his sword, with one strike, he severs that in half. And so now you have this split, but with 4 prongs on the top of it. And then 4 charioteers of Maeve's army come to confront him. And he kills them immediately and beheads them and puts 1 head on each of the 4 spikes. And then he writes his Ohm writing on this, which says, before you can pass, you have to pull this out of the ground with 1 hand. And so everyone tries to pull this split tree with the severed heads on it out of the ground. None can do it. And then Fergus says, all right, I'll give it a go. And so he asks for a chariot. And so somebody brings him a chariot. And he grabs the tree and he stands and pulls against the chariot and it shatters the chariot. He asks for another and another. It says he breaks 17 chariots until finally he says, all right, someone bring me my chariot. And this time, Fergus is able to match this deed of Cú Chulainn and pull this tree out so that the army can pass by.
Yeah, mine has some differences from that, but the gist is the same. And the king comments like how quickly these 4 men were killed, and that's shocking. And Fergus is like, that's not the surprising part. The surprising part is that this fork was made by a single slice of a sword. Only 1. So it's not even the immediate killings that are the impressive part. It's the setup of the challenge. And he did it to block the chariots from crossing the river. He placed it perfectly. So as you say, some wizardry here, and that each one of these, it's not a direct confrontation. He is setting up these challenges to kind of waylay and delay this army, because at some point the Ulstermen have to get over their labor pains. So Cahullann, it's in the first one he was busy and distracted, but here I think he's just being annoying. He's full willing to kill people who come confront him, but here he's setting up these challenges, and it does slow them down big time.
Yeah. So moving into the next book, the king and queen are asking, who is this guy? What is this one person that is slowing us down and getting our way? And I love the way mine is translated. Is he the hardest man in Ulster? Said Maeve. The hardest, surely, said Fergus. You'll not meet a tougher opponent. No spear point sharper, quicker, or more piercing. No fighter fiercer, no raven more ravenous. No one of his age a third as brave. No lion more ferocious. No bulwark in battle. No mighty sledgehammer. No shield of soldiers. No nemesis of armies as able as him. And then he starts telling stories about the childhood of this child. He's only 17 right now.
Yeah, I love this. The king and queen say, let us hear some of the doings and stories of the sort of people we are approaching. It was here that they heard for the first time about the exploits of Cahullann. These seem like good questions before they muster an army and go.
We're going to war. We don't need to know anything about them.
That doesn't matter. But my next segment is called Cahullan's Boyhood Deeds. And this is Fergus telling stories around a fire. but they are impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of these. So I don't think we should talk about all the killing, but I do like his boyhood stories.
Let's go for it. Hop in.
So initially, he goes to join this boy troop. It's like warriors in training, the boy troop of Ulster. And there's a very specific number. Mine says 150.
Mine, it keeps being written as 350s, so 150s, but there must be a poetic turn to this in the native language.
350s. Maybe it's like units. It's units of 50s, 150 boys. He comes up to them and they end up fighting because that's what happens. And he has his first, what mine says, a warp spasm, a riastard, where he goes into Hulk mode. And he turns into this monster. It says one eye sinks deep in while the other one like bulges outward. His eyes go crazy. His body changes. And he's defeating all these boys who've been trained in battle until the king, Conchobar, how do you say it?
Either Conchobar or Conchovar,
It's gotta be
depending
the
if I
V.
remember that V thing or not.
But they're impressed with this boy and he becomes part of the group. And it says he did this at the age of 5.
This initial encounter is not, they're not battling in the sense of swords and spears. It's a ball game. It's basically an equivalent of rugby, near as I can tell. But then they start fighting because he comes and he dominates the ball game. And yes, it turns into this melee battle. And the warp spasm. There are a few things from this book. I mean, when you read a lot, right, you can't remember everything from every book. But the things that I remember from this one, the pillow talk, the ohm writing, and the warp spasm. Thomas Kinsella uses that translation, and that's become kind of famous in this one.
What does yours call it?
The torque. Torque, but it all has this concept of a twisting, of a rotation, of a change. I mean, it's a berserker rage, but it's more than that. It's a physical manifestation of it. And later on, when he has some of his torques later, we may go into a little bit more detail on what it really looks like when it happens to him. But this is actually a pretty good one. And again, this is just him with boys. This is a young boy. The torque seized him. His hair stood on end. You'd think each hair had been hammered into his head. Each hair seemed tipped with a spark, so sharply did they shoot upright. He closed one eye as narrow as the eye of a needle. He opened the other as wide as the mouth of a goblet. He bared his teeth from ear to ear. He opened his gob so wide you could see the inside of his gullet. The hero's light sprang from the crown of his head. And so it is this... It's almost an Old Testament angel kind of thing, like the Ezekiel wheels within wheels and eyes everywhere. I mean, he just goes, Hulk mode. He turns into something else. The battle fury descends upon him, and it is just it's such a striking way of describing this. Anyone who has ever fought, I think, on any level, I mean, even if it's mild, right? If it's like wrestling or boxing, I think has this concept where you may not have been able to achieve it, but you have known people that they just become something else. They get in the ring and they are not the same as the individual who stepped into it. You certainly will see this on the battlefield, this kind of red mist that descends over people's eyes. And all of a sudden, these gentle, kind people become just killing machines and warriors. And it's an incredible poetic way, I think, of describing that effect. And in this case, I think he's 4 at this time.
Mine says 5.
5. Okay.
You know, the ripe old age. But the king actually grabs his hand because it says he's laying these boys low. He's not actually killing them. As you say, it's like a toy shield, but they're hurling balls and javelins at one another. So he's taking them down. And the king grabs his hand and says, these boys are being roughly handled. And Cuchulainn says, boy, Cuchulainn, I am in the right, friend Conchobar. I have left my home and my mother and father to join their games, and they treated me roughly. But he has made a name for himself here already. He offers his protection of them. He becomes part of the band of boys that are going to train here, this brotherhood. There's also at this time, it says that he couldn't sleep unless he has the same level under his head and feet. So they make him the stone slab to sleep upon. But if anybody tries to wake him up, he automatically kills them. He like lashes out with his fist and punches them through the head or throat. And so nobody dares to wake him up anymore.
And this is another one of those things that as a modern reader, well, that's just messed up, right? This is just violent. Like, why? What's the deal here? But where I first came across this sort of thing was actually in Western medieval literature. Have you read like the Song of Roland?
Mm-mm-mm.
It describes Roland's childhood. And again, there's acts like this where something irritates him, so he hits them and he kills them. You see this actually in a lot of Arthurian legend as well, these youths who have this great strength and power. Our society, we really applaud control, and I approve of that. I think that's a good thing. But this is a warrior society. And so the virtue being demonstrated in the eyes of the hearers of this story is this great strength. I mean, this is the guy you want on your side when the forces of Connacht are marching into your land and no one else can fight.
Well, and here he's young and hasn't learned to control it in any way. This is just raw power from this very young boy. But the potential to be that great warrior, because if that's innate in there, you're not trying to build up some strength. He's already got it.
Mm-hmm.
What he has to learn to do is use it. And so this is his formative years. I mean, think like Hercules, right? Where just the strength is just a part of him already.
He keeps doing these amazing things as a boy. Mine says there's a boy not yet 5. He fights off a raiding party of 27. And this is one of the other times the Ulstermen are under the curse. That keeps getting to them because this raiding party comes, the curse hits them, and this boy fights off this massive thing. I think that some of the most interesting stories here, though, this is where we learn where he gets his name.
You skipped the stripping game.
I did skip the stripping. I'm not sure I remember the stripping game.
They play boy games. Okay, so he says, when they played shoot the goal, it was Cú Chulainn who filled the hole with his shots, and they were helpless against him. When it was their turn to shoot at the hole altogether, he turned them aside single-handed, and not one ball got him. It's him versus 150 other boys. When it was time to wrestle, he overthrew by himself the whole 350s of them, and there wasn't room around him for the number needed to throw him. When they played the stripping game, he stripped them all stark naked. They couldn't even pluck the brooch from his cloak.
I've never played the stripping game.
I just kind of assumed it was like a card game at first, but no, they're grappling, and whoever ends up naked, like shame on you. They couldn't even get the brooch from his cloak. But then he earns himself a name.
And this is really an interesting story because what happens is he is befriended by this noble, this smith named, mine spells it Cúlann, Culann, which you'll note is very similar to the Chulainn of Cú Chulainn. This smith really, really likes him. And so he invites him to a banquet at his home. But he forgets that he invited him to the banquet, and so he has locked the doors of his home, and he has this terrifying hound, this great mastiff beast that's outside, it says, with 3 chains on him and 3 men at the end of every chain. And this is who he uses to guard his fort and his livestock, this hound. When Cú Chulainn comes, he's late to the party, and this hound is there. And all of a sudden, there is a noise, and the people inside think, oh, my goodness, I forgot about this young man who wasn't named Cú Chulainn yet. I forgot about this young man. He's going to be torn to shreds. But no, this is our hero. And instead, he easily overcomes this dog. The host is sad. He says, you are welcome, boy, for the sake of your mother's heart. But for my own part, how I wish that this feast had never been. My livelihood is no life. My household is an empty house now that I have lost my hound. He guarded my life and my honor. Not to worry, said the lad. I'll rear you a pup out of the same breed, and until such times as he's big and strong enough for work, I will be your hound to guard your cattle and yourself, and I will guard Merthimna Plain. No herd or flock will be led away from me without my knowing it. Then your name shall be Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Cúlann, said Cathbad. Cathbad is a druid. It's a good name for me, said Cú Chulainn. And then the end here. It's no surprise that someone who did this when he was not yet 7 should do great deeds now that he is 17.
From there, it goes on where Cathbad, that druid, basically has these foretellings. And these are when I'm going to try to change it. How do you say it? Cú Chulainn.
Don't change it
Cú
because
Chulainn.
you're probably right.
Cú Chulainn is how I've heard it, so I don't know how to shift it now.
Don't shift it because you're probably right.
I
have
don't know.
no idea what's correct on this one. So,
It's something.
yeah. Readers, take your choice until somebody who actually knows corrects you because we don't know.
Stephen annotated it CC. Did you say that already?
Yeah. In my notes, I just write CC because that's easier.
So Cathbad the Druid was staying with his son, and he has all these studious men learning Druid lore from him. And Cathbad said if a warrior took up arms for the first time that day, his name would endure in Ireland as a word signifying mighty acts, and stories about him would last forever. So Cú Chulainn hears this, goes to the king, and says, I need a sword. He becomes a fighter that day. He puts down those toys and he picks up real weapons that day. But turns out there was more to the story. Cathbad was just talking in general. Cú Chulainn didn't listen to the rest.
I think he did listen to the rest.
Really?
But I think he was okay with it. So the king, Conchobar, is the one who gives him his arms. And again, there's this great passage where he keeps giving him weapons and Cú Chulainn keeps breaking them. None of them are strong enough until eventually the king, Conchobar, gives him his own weapons, the weapons of the king. And finally, these hold. So it's an impressive arming of this young man. But then Cathbad shows up and he's so upset. He says, this is one unlucky mother's son. And Conchobar is furious. He's like, well, I thought you said that this was a good day to do this. And then Cú Chulainn says, Conchobar says, why did you lie to me to Cú Chulainn? And Cú Chulainn says, O king of the Fianna, it was no lie. He was telling his pupils this morning south of Amain that this day might be favorable for, and I heard him, and that's why I came to you. It is true, said Cathbad, that this day favors one thing. There is no doubt about the one who takes up arms today will achieve great fame, but his life will be short. Fine by me, said Cú Chulainn. So long as I'm famous, I'm happy to live just one day on earth. And so I think he did hear the whole story, but what he cared about was the first part.
I read it that he didn't hear it, but he's totally fine with it.
Totally fine with it. This is a recurring trope. This was the choice of Achilles. Mm-hmm. Achilles had the choice as well to live a long life or to die young with undying fame. And Achilles made his choice and Cú Chulainn made his choice. And the parallels between this and the Iliad, very, very strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and that idea of achieving glory. So you burn bright, but for a short time. And this is in his mind, fine. And what is he here? Maybe 7? But the next day, there's another kind of teaching from the Druid. Whoever mounts his first chariot today, his name will live forever in Ireland. And Cú Chulainn goes to the king and says, my chariot! He breaks 12 before they give him the king's chariot. And that is his chariot.
And then there is this wild kind of adolescent joyride he goes on. I mean, this totally reminds me of somebody getting, dad's keys to the Corvette and I'm going to go out and have an adventure. And he does, but it is a very warrior adventure. There are these guards that are meant to hold certain points around, and he goes and basically gets one of them to leave so that he can stand and be on guard for him. And then he starts doing crazy things. I mean, he's killing people right and left. And again, we're not going to go over all that. But then he goes through and he asks, would the king like us to have some food? And the guy's like, yeah, the king would like you to have food. And he says, do you think he wants a live stag or a dead stag? He's like, well, a dead stag would be fine. But if you can bring one alive, no one can do that. Well, Cú Chulainn can do that.
He can do it.
Yeah. So he ends up harnessing this live stag that's running behind him on the chariot. And then he sees these birds around and he's like, maybe we should have some birds for the meal too. And the charioteer's like, well, yeah, that'd be great if you could. And he does. He has this like ricochet stun shot that he does with his slingshot where he's like knocking down all these goose that he then kind of drags with him. And he's been killing these other warriors along the way. So he's got all these severed heads hanging from the chariot. And so as he is coming back to Conchobar's fort, it is a terrifying sight. There's this man with a bloody chariot and severed heads and dead birds and a running stag behind him. And the battle fury is on him. I mean, the blood is pumping in him, and he is screaming as he approaches the ford. I swear by the God of Ulster that unless a man is sent to fight me, I'll spill the blood of everybody in the fort. And Conchobar the king believes this. Now, again, this is not a story for children, because the solution to this from Conchobar is fairly blunt. My translation, quote, "Bring on the naked women," end quote. He's not going to kill the naked women. So these women show up outside, and this basically cools him. They are able to subdue him, throw him into cold water, and they're able to finally calm him down from this kind of epic feat he's doing. And again, this ends. Is it any wonder, said Fiacha Macfirfeib, that someone who did all this when he was 7 should triumph against all odds and beat all comers in fair fight now that he's reached 17?
Yeah, there's a lot in this segment. Like, I think my favorite parts of this book are his boyhood deeds, this development of him, because when he first gets that chariot, the charioteer says, well, where do you want to go? Which direction? And this is a quote from mine, "As far as the road will take us." He's just ready to go. This is a new thing. He has freedom, and he's so able. He has no fear of anyone, and he'd have no fear. And yeah, he kicks the guy off the lookout so that he can go into enemy territory. The birds in mine are swans, and he captures them live, so they're flying in this like halo above him. I mean, it's quite striking. But when they send out these women to him, he's still a little boy. He hides his face, and that's when they can grab him, and they throw him into cold water, and it says that the vat bursts asunder about him. So they throw him into another one, and it boils. It's the third vat of cold water that actually chills him out. This is a serious dude.
Quite a day. Quite a day. And again, this is all background. This is all stories being told about him to the forces of Connacht about this is the guy.
Yeah. So I love this transition, though, because they're telling these stories. They're hearing these stories. That is amazing and terrifying. And then the king says, well, let us be off. They're ready to go. Yeah. They know that this kid is out there ready to fight them and like, well, let us be off. I find King Ailill calm.
Yeah, my translation is he just says, advance.
Okay.
Same idea. It doesn't really fit with what's just gone on before. But they do indeed advance. And again, they come across another ohm thing. No one passes unless a warrior can jump this in a chariot. There's a hoop that has to be jumped. I mean, so there's all these delaying tactics that he's using, but it's really in this chapter that the fighting comes on in force. And there are multiple challenges. And again, I'm not going to talk about all of them. Most of these ones I think we can skip. I mean, if you're a storyteller, you could lean into these really well because there's a lot of these. There are some later ones that I think are going to be a bit more important. Were there any of these that you wanted to go over?
Not specifically. Just know that the breadth of things he uses between grappling and weapons and just nature, he uses them all as weapons. And it's always single combat here early on. And they keep like, well, who's going to go fight him? Who's going to go fight him? This idea of single combat, I think, is interesting. I'm curious what you know about it, because I can think of stories where single combat is a thing, or even David and Goliath in the Bible. But then, like, it's a win or lose, right? So single combat means my side wins and you're defeated. That's not how it goes here. They send one guy at a time to battle Cuchulainn. He wins every single time. But then it just happens again and again and again. Mm-hmm. So it seems very ritualized, but it doesn't mean Ulster has won.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think this is one of the big arguments about ancient warfare. There are many. We don't really know how ancient warfare was fought. There are some things we think we know, but in story after story, this kind of thing pops up where there is one champion on one side who is challenging a champion on the other side. And you get the sense that the two kind of party lines are just sort of watching while these two fight in the middle. And then in like the biblical story where it's okay, if the champion wins, then we win. Even then there was fighting afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's not like, okay, yeah, we're just going to let you kill us all now because our champion lost. I've wondered about this. The best comparison I've come up with is actually the riddling game with Bilbo and the Hobbit. Because remember, what was the bet there? The bet was that if Bilbo wins, Gollum will show him the way out. But if Gollum wins, then Gollum will eat him. If Bilbo lost, do you really think he would have just said, go ahead, start chewing?
Yeah.
I mean, and so this kind of has that feel to me as well. Now, any warrior that could challenge, take on, and kill Cú Chulainn would have unspeakable honor, right? It was worth doing from that standpoint in this honor and faith society. But yeah, it's certainly not a, okay, we give up now because you beat our guy.
Right. And the army keeps moving. So it's funny how many guys are like, I'm not going to fight him. He's a kid. And then he kills them immediately. Like, he is an exceptional boy. He's 17 and can destroy anyone. But the army keeps moving, and they do find the bull. They take it. It's funny, the queen, Maeve, who's kind of the driver behind all of this, he can throw things really, really far, and he'll kill people at a distance when they don't send somebody to him to confront him. So she walks around with shields above her head at all times. It's never her who goes to fight.
Yeah, that's just smart.
Yes.
Because he's impressive with that. But yeah, you're right. They do find the bull. And there's a digression here where it describes a bit about the bull. So this is my translation. Here are some of the qualities of the Táin Bó Cúailnge. He could bull 50 heifers every day. They'd calve at the same hour the next day, and those that didn't would burst, overwhelmed as they were by the offspring of the brown bull. 50 grown young fellows would play games every evening on the broad of his back. His shadow could shelter 100 warriors from heat or cold. Another of his qualities was this, that no ghost or gremlin or battle demon would dare approach the zone in which he stood. And every evening as he came to his byre, the bass swell of his lowing resounded throughout the four quarters of Cúailnge to make great music for its people. That is an impressive animal.
I mean, it costs a lot for her to go get it, so I hope it's exceptional. In many ways, the queen bothers me because they just keep killing men. Cuchulainn keeps killing men. The old men of Ulster are still in their pangs. Days and days go by, and he kills so many. And it reminds me of Jadis in The Magician's Nephew, where she spilled out her army's blood, like she was doing it, like she had this great cost. Well, there's a lot of men that die.
Yeah, for stupid reasons.
Seemingly.
This is not a... Yes, totally agree with that.
Yeah, I more than the reasons behind it, and so many things, the reasons matter so much. I think in this, it's more of a contextualization of how different places got their names. Like so many, every time he defeats somebody, that's a new name.
Yeah.
For a river or a stone or a hill, an area. So many names come from these battles.
As well as just these individual stories, which can be really interesting in their own right. And this book, the one that we're in the middle of here, is book by book, I mean chapter, is kind of a filler in some ways, but there are a few other things that pop out of this. We get to the qualities of the Brown Bull, which I just read through. The army of Connacht is ravaging the land. So it's not just that they're after this bull, they are harming the people of Ulster. But then there's one other really important thing. Well, I take that back. There's a couple other important things that happens. The next one is between Fergus and the Queen. Ailill is wondering, where are those two? What are they up to? And so he sends his messenger. Well, they're up to what you would think. So Fergus and the Queen are sleeping together. And so this messenger of the king, Ailill, steals Fergus's sword out of his scabbard that's just lying there. And he takes it from him and shows it to the king. Now, we learned in the very first chapter of this book that the king is not jealous. This apparently is not a particular problem, but he keeps Fergus's sword, and so he doesn't have one anymore. Fergus replaces this with a wooden one. He goes and rips apart a tree and hews it into a shape of a sword that he puts in his scabbard, but he's essentially unarmed at this point. It reminds me about in the Eddas when Freyr gives up his sword and then he's unarmed for the Battle of Ragnarok. You get a little bit of that flavor here. The stories aren't completely parallel, and we'll see where this goes. But Fergus losing his sword is definitely important. The other thing I love is this next passage where, again, the armies of Connacht are ravaging Merthimna Plain. This is where Cú Chulainn is from. This is his home. And what we learn is that not only is he an incredible warrior, but he also has these sort of pseudo-magical powers, or even full-on magical powers. During one of these poems, he says, "I summon the waters to come to my aid," said Cú Chulainn. "I summon heaven and earth, and above all the Cron." The Cron is a river. "The black waters of the Cron will keep them from Merthimna until soldiers' work be done up north at Mount O'Chaney." And the water rose to the treetops. He's able to summon the land to protect this area and to move the army into a place where he can defend, a place where they have to approach him there. And that's just impressive. And then the last thing in this chapter that I got is that you had said he was really good hucking these stones. He's got a sling, and he's actually killing up to 100 enemies a night. I mean, he is just pelting their camp, and they are downing not by ones, they are being killed by the dozens and by the hundreds. And so if they just hang out there, there won't be any army left before very long.
There's also some battle of wits. Don't think the army's not above bribery. They sent a lot of stuff to Cú Chulainn to make a deal. And he's like, "I can't do that. Nope, can't do that. Nope, Ulster would never agree to that." And in the end, they're asked, "Is there anything that will do?" And he says, "There is, but I won't say what it is. If you can find anyone who knows what I mean, I'll agree to it." And Fergus knows.
Fergus knows.
In essence, he's going to block this ford. So it's all defended, and it's a person a night to come confront him. And the king takes this as good news. He's like, "Okay, then we'll lose one a night instead of 100.
Yeah, it says, "I know what he means," said Fergus. "Not that it's much good to you. These are his terms. The cattle to stay by the ford while he engages the army in single combat on a daily basis. He's playing for time until help arrives from the Ulstermen. Mind you, I'm surprised they're taking so long to get over the curse." And then, Ailill responds, "Better for us," said Ailill, "to lose one man every day than 100 every night." And so now we have this really kind of glorious setup where now is the opportunity for Cú Chulainn to do these one-on-one battles with picked warriors. And what this allows then is for these great warriors to be selected. And it's a much bigger deal than him just killing whatever riffraff is coming his way.
Here, Fergus actually goes and speaks to him directly. They're friends, they're even relatives. And it's funny, Cú Chulainn sees his wooden stick and makes fun of him.
Yeah. Nice sword he got there.
Right. But I do like the greeting. Cú Chulainn says, he says, "Welcome, friend Fergus. If the salmon were swimming in the rivers or river mouths, I'd give you one and share another. If a flock of wild birds were to alight on the plain, I'd give you one and share another. With a handful of cress or sea herb and a handful of marshwort, and a drink out of the sand, and myself in your place in the ford of battle, watching while you slept." He's offering to share food and goods with him, but Fergus says, "Actually, I'm not here for food. He's there to talk."
Yeah. And Cú Chulainn takes the deal. He's game for this single combat. Unfortunately for the armies of Connacht, though, Fergus doesn't go alone. One of the sons of the king and queen decide they're going to go with him. And Fergus tries to talk him out. It says, "Nope, you're too rude. Don't come." But the guy says, "No, I'm going to come." And so Etter Comol, or however that's pronounced, follows along with him. And sure enough, he starts to insult Cú Chulainn. Now, again, this is a parley. He's at peace between Fergus and Cú Chulainn. And Cú Chulainn is not looking to do anything here. But this guy's looking to start a fight. And so as Fergus leaves, this guy actually wheels back around and comes to challenge him. It's no contest. This guy is doomed. He's dead immediately. But what Fergus is seeing now is essentially he thinks Cú Chulainn has broken a peace treaty, right? He's broken this agreement that they had. And Cú Chulainn actually submits to letting Fergus ride his chariot over him. He says, no, talk to that other guy's charioteer. He's the one who picked the fight. And Fergus is eventually assuaged. And again, the deal goes forward. And so this is where we get this kind of list of heroes that are going to challenge Cú Chulainn. And again, I won't talk about all of them, and certainly not in depth, but this is a good example, right? The next one is somebody named Nad Crantel, who is supposed to be this incredible fighter. And there's usually this kind of bidding war that happens where Ailill and Maeve will pick a warrior, and then they'll ply him with wine, they'll offer him gifts, and then they usually will offer him their daughter. So it's spelled in my translation Finnabair. So Finnabair, or if you do the V with the B like it says I'm supposed to, Finnabair, who is supposed to be the most beautiful of the daughters of the king and queen. And so she is kind of the prize that all these warriors are fighting for. Now, it's interesting as I was thinking about this name, and I don't know if this is true or not, but my mind went there.
Guinevere?
Yes!
Yeah, I heard it too.
Yes!
I don't know if it's an actual parallel, but I could hear it in the name.
Yeah, I would be curious for somebody who knows what they were talking about on this to track that down.
Mm.
Well, this guy doesn't do well either, but he thinks he does real well. Because as he approaches Cú Chulainn, he starts throwing spears or arrows, or mine just says points. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but they're these projectile weapons. The thing is, though, Cú Chulainn is hunting. He's hunting birds. And to him, these spear points or arrows are just steps he can take. So he's climbing up these thrown projectiles to grab these birds out of the air. But this warrior thinks that means he's running away. He's not running away. He's performing this incredible act of physicality and huntsmanship.
Defying gravity.
It is just unbelievable. I mean, this is like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon stuff, right? Where he's skywalking. I mean, just amazing. But then this guy, Nad, goes back to the camp and is like, oh, yeah, he ran away from me. Well, that doesn't go well.
Cú Chulainn does not run away. And so he challenges him, and they're going to throw spears, and you can't, no dodging except upward.
Yeah. Before the challenge, though, you had mentioned the beard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this guy won't fight him because he doesn't have a beard. He's too young. So Cú Chulainn makes a blackberry beard.
A false beard.
Yeah. He smears blackberries on his chin so it looks like he has a beard, and then the guy will fight him.
They can only dodge things thrown by jumping upward. Like the vertical leap on this guy. Amazing. So he wins. Nad Crantel, this warrior of legend. Yeah, he's dead. And this girl gets offered over and over because every single day they send a new warrior. Yeah. So every day she gets offered to someone else.
And every day Cú Chulainn is just unstoppable and amazing. Some of the warriors have particular skills that he has to overcome. What I do enjoy here, though, is they do go over what in my translation is listed as the list of his feats. So feats or skills. This reminds me of like Legend of Zelda. I press this button on my controller and my player does this thing.
Yeah, it's sweet moves.
Yeah, well, here are the sweet moves that Cú Chulainn has. The ball feat, the blade feat, and the feat of the leveled shield, the javelin feat and the rope feat, the body feat, the cat feat, and the hero's salmon leap, the pole vault and the hurdle leap, the noble charioteer's reverse turn, the Guy Bulga and the brazen edge, the wheel feat and the 8-man feat, the breathing feat, the mouth rage and the warrior's roar, the stop cut and the ricochet stun shot, and climbing a spear and straightening up on his point. All these were performed according to a warrior's rules. It's an impressive list of feats.
It is. Actually, I have a few that, I mean, they're the same things, but they're translated differently. So I have the Gebolga, I believe, is a spear or a javelin. But there's the, I don't think you said this one the same, the leap over a poisoned stroke. Totally reminded me of Wheel of Time when the main guy is learning the sword and
Yes.
there's all the different names for the different movements and the different positions and how you walk and how you move and your footwork along the way. That's these. They have names. And so as he's practicing these feats, this guy comes up to fight him. Cú Chulainn doesn't even know that someone's attacking him because he's so busy practicing. And then he casually, I think he throws a ball, or mine says an apple. Mine was an apple feet, but I think that's the ball one. He throws an apple at this guy and the guy's out. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. There are a couple other characters that get introduced that show up more than once in the story because Queen Maeve usually needs messengers. She needs somebody that's going to talk with Cú Chulainn. And so the way she does this is she grabs the Ulster exiles. So some of the people from Ulster that know Cú Chulainn, and he doesn't kill them on sight. He comes to them and often greets them with that beautiful greeting you had mentioned earlier. And so Lugaid is a guy that shows up here, and he becomes a frequent messenger. Lugaid is how it's spelled in mine. But the next warrior, so far, all these warriors that he's killing are warriors, men of Connacht, right? They're not people that have a direct relationship with Cú Chulainn. But this is where things kind of start to turn, because there's a warrior who is a comrade of Cú Chulainn among them named Ferbeith. And he challenged him. And again, it's all for this daughter of the king and queen. She is the prize. Now, Cú Chulainn, this is the only point in the story where I ever saw where he actually got worried because he believed this individual to be a perfect match against him. And so he asked him to come and talk with him. Let's try and talk about this on the night before. Well, the talk doesn't go well. It's clear they are going to fight and he's not going to turn away. And then what follows is what I thought to be one of the weirdest passages in the book. Because as Cú Chulainn is walking along, he comes across a chunk of holly. And this holly like stabs him in the knee. And he pulls this out, and the other guy says, "What you got there?" And he says, "Well, come over here and I'll show it to you." And the guy says, "Nah, throw it." And so Cú Chulainn throws it at him and kills him.
Yeah.
So he never actually has to fight this guy. He kills him that night before. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this passage. This one seemed kind of out of character and out of context for me.
Yeah, the one that stuck out to me was another guy comes up and he lives. He is not killed in the end. His claim to fame is that he's the only man of all who met Cuchulainn on the Táin Bó Cúailnge who escaped him alive, though it was a cruel escape. Ever afterward, for as long as he lived, this man, Loreen, couldn't empty his bowels properly. He was never free from chest pains, and he couldn't eat without groaning. But he's the one who lived.
The one who lived. The reason he lives is the mercy of Cú Chulainn. So that guy I mentioned before, Lugaid, the guy that is the messenger between the two of them, this guy is that man's brother. And so Lugaid went up to him and said, "Yeah, he's an idiot for challenging you, but he is my brother. Please don't kill him. Beat him up all you want, but please don't kill him." And so the only one of these warriors who survives against a direct challenge to Cú Chulainn is the one where he demonstrates mercy at the request of this other friend.
Next up in mine is the woman who comes to him. A woman says, "I am King Wuan's daughter, and I have brought you my treasure and cattle. I love you because of the great tales I have heard." He basically tells her to go away. You've come at a bad time. She does not like this. She says, "I might be a help." And he says, "No, you'll be a hindrance." And then it turns into this threat. "I'll come in the shape of a great she-wolf to stampede the beasts into the ford against you. I'll come before you in the shape of a hornless red heifer and lead the cattle herd to trample you." This is a love being spurned here. So it goes from, "Hey, I love you, here's all my stuff," to "I will get you, and here's how."
Yeah, and this scene I find to be fascinating because this is our introduction to somebody called the Morrigan. So this is one of those battle goddesses I mentioned at the beginning. This is no mortal that's approaching him. This is literally a goddess of battle. And again, she is spurned. And there's this threefold challenge. And what you just read there was actually the back and forth. So the first challenge is she says she'll be an eel to trip him in a river, right? And he says, "Well, I'll crush her ribs with my toes." And then she claims that she'll turn into a she-wolf and stampede cattle against him. And then he says that he will put out the eye of that wolf with a sling. And then she says, "I will become a hornless red heifer to surge the water so you can't see." And then he says, "I will break your leg with a stone." And so this is the debate and the discussion. And then sure enough, another battle ensues. In order to do this battle, again, he's got to put on a fake beard. This time he uses magic. He turns grass into a beard with his magic. And during this time, too, Maeve is not playing fair. She's sending whole squads of men out to kill them. So, he'll kill 6 at a time, 20 at a time. But in one of these major fights in the river, it plays out exactly as that conversation went. So he's fighting somebody, I think, named Loch. And as he's fighting him, she shows up as an eel to trip him, and he crushes her ribs. She shows up as a she-wolf to stampede cattle through the river. He throws a sling stone at her and puts out her eye. She shows up as this red heifer. The water surged so he can't see, so he breaks her leg. And he, of course, emerges victorious. This is the first time, too, where we hear about the very special weapon. Well, I'm sorry, it's not the first time we hear about it. It's the first time we see it in combat. This is the Gaibolga. This is a spear that the idea is that it enters in and then it expands like a mushroom bullet and causes more damage on the inside. Again, there's a lot of kind of adolescent humor on this. The Gaibolga usually enters through the bottom. So because all these warriors have this like magic protected skin that turns to horn if in battle. So the only place this can penetrate is through an orifice. And so, yeah.
I thought the wording, the translation is funny. He says, Cú Chulainn struck him with it up through the fundament of his body.
Yeah, that's more polite than I think
the fundament.
The telling is.
But there is some poetry in this part. Like it comes in waves. And in my translation, Cú Chulainn has a poem here. It says he made this chant, and part of it says, I have held them single-handed, but one stick won't make fire. Give me 2 or 3 and torches will blaze. He's getting tired and wants some help. I am almost worn out, he says, by single contests. I can't kill all their best alone as I am. And after he uses this Gaibolga to take out this warrior, it says a great weariness fell on Cú Chulainn. And here that woman shows up again. The Morrigan appeared to him, but this time in the shape of a squint-eyed old woman milking a cow.
And mine points out that it's a one-eyed old woman. And she comes up to him, says he was dying with thirst, and he asked her for a drink. She gave him milk from the first teat. Good health to the giver, said Cú Chulainn, and the blessing of the gods of heaven and on earth to you. With that, her ribs were healed. This is the Morrigan. This was the one who had turned herself into an eel, and it had prophesied earlier that she could only ever be healed if Cú Chulainn blessed her. And he was not willing to bless her, but here he's deceived, and he gives her a blessing for this drink of milk, and the ribs are healed. She gave him milk from the second teat, and her eye was healed. She gave him milk from the third teat, and her leg was healed. You told me once, she said, that you would never heal me. Had I known it was you, said Cú Chulainn, I never would have. This is fascinating. This is mythology at its best. And like most mythology at its best, I don't fully know what all this means, but this idea of kind of this divine or demonic assistance that's offered and spurned, but then somehow he's able to overcome that, but he's not separate from it. And so what does this mean in terms of his relationship with the gods, and particularly this goddess of battle? It's fascinating, and I think it would be interesting to think about this a lot more.
Well, here, thy next segment is called The Pact is Broken and the Great Carnage. So the queen is getting upset, finally, about the number of men being killed. And she breaks the truce. They had a deal. Fergus had gone, they'd made a deal, this single combat, but they now break that trust. And Cú Chulainn comes after them. It says, Cú Chulainn fell upon the army as they were settling their camp, and he kills so many. I mean, they actually list out the names, but they broke trust with him, this one guy defending, and they're the ones who cheat. The treachery is on their side.
And they do it in multiple ways. So they have this agreement to only do single combat. Well, they send multiple people against him. He kills them. They have this agreement that they're going to have a peace meeting. Maeve says, just meet with me and my women, okay? And so he's planning to go unarmed, but his charioteer says, nah, take a sword. And good thing he did, because he's ambushed on the way to this meeting. And again, he kills all of them, so he survives because he had the sword. And then there's this weird thing where Maeve tries to fool him by offering him her daughter, Finnever. And this guy that's pretending to be King Ailill, Well, he recognizes this immediately. He kills the pretender. He doesn't kill Finnever, but he does cut off her hair, and he sets these up on these two standing stones as a marker. And so you have the standing stones coming into this as well. And yeah, Maeve is doing all this underhanded stuff, and he's coming out on top, but he is exhausted. He is so exhausted. And then this next passage is just great. Cú Chulainn and his charioteer are standing there, and they see this man coming to him. Legge describes him. In brief, he's a tall, good-looking man. He has a square-cut beard, curly yellow hair. He wears a green cloak pinned to his breast with a bright silver brooch. Next to his white skin, a knee-length tunic of royal satin embroidered with red gold. He carries a black shield with a boss of white bronze, a 5-pointed spear, and a forked javelin. He whirls them about in a display of spectacular skill, yet no one challenges him, and he takes no one under his notice as if they couldn't see him. Nor can they, my young friend, said Cú Chulainn. This is a friendly being come from the other world to offer me support, for they know the hardship I undergo as I fight alone on the Táin Bó Cúailnge against the 4 provinces of Ireland. This is Lugh. We've met the Morrigan. We now meet Lugh, one of the great gods of Celtic mythology.
He tells Cuchulainn, this is a manly stand. And Cuchulainn at times is very egotistical, but here, speaking, he says it isn't very much. He actually deprecates himself in response to this warrior god. Is he a god? He tells Cuchulainn that he is his father from the sea day.
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it.
It's usually pronounced the Sheed.
Sheed.
So these are the fairy, the folk. So in the history of Ireland and Irish culture and Irish mythology, there's this kind of progression of different peoples. So you'll hear them talk about the early giants, right? The Fomari, the hideous people. And then you will hear about the Tuatha De Danann. So these are some of the great heroes that became the gods of Irish culture and myth. And this is where things like the Sheed come from, which are the fairies. So if you've heard of the Banshee, right? Banshee is the Bansheed. So I mean, this is fairyland. This is where they come from. And so Lugh is definitely of the Tuatha De Danann.
I think this is a fantastic conversation because Cuchulainn here, as you said, exhausted, and he tells this man, this god, my wounds are heavy. It is time they were let heal. And the warrior said, sleep a while then, Cuchulainn, a heavy sleep of 3 days and 3 nights by the grave mound at Lurga. I'll stand against the armies for that time.
I love so much about this. I mean, Lugh is, again, one of the great heroes. He's associated with things like kingship, with law, with order, with justice. And so he's an admirable character in so many ways. And he's recognizing this heroic stance that this warrior is doing. And he stands in that gap for this period, which is wonderful. I think there's a lot that can be taken out of this. But then, I mean, come on. A 3-day sleep and then waking again in glory to continue his great work. I mean, the parallels and echoes of Christianity in this are strong as well, but in that weird pagan way. I mean, nobody would argue that Cú Chulainn is truly a Christian warrior. He's just not. But again, this is what C.S. Lewis talks about the good dreams, right? These echoes, these wonderful things that work their way into these stories and truth shines out of them. And so there is so much just refreshing and comforting and warming about this passage.
This man, it says, as Cuchulainn sleeps, he examines each wound and cleans it. So it's not just sleep. It's also a refreshment of the soul and the body. And there's this chant he sings over Cuchulainn that I want to read because I think it's wonderful. He says as he sleeps, rise, son of mighty Ulster, with your wounds made whole, a fair man faces your foes. In the long night over the ford, rest in his human care. Everywhere hosts hewn down, succor has come from the Sheed. To save you in this place, your vigil on the hound fords, a boy left on lonely guard, defending cattle and doom, kill phantoms while I kill. They have none to match your span of force or fiery wrath. Your force with the deadly foe when chariots travel the valleys. Then arise, arise, my son. He is given a reprieve and in such a glorious way. And he is out for 3 days. And this God-man protects the land of Cuchulainn, the land of Ulster, while he rests.
During this time, there's one other thing that happens. The men of Ulster are under the curse, but nobody knows when that's going to end. And again, Cú Chulainn is just one guy, but the warriors of Ulster are legendary in their own right. And so at some point, they are going to show up. And we start to see a trickle of that, where it's no longer Cú Chulainn just by himself. We start to see the other men of Ulster start to take a stand. And it begins with, frankly, children. So a son of the king and a group of children that are fighting with him, but they do go and fight. They're all killed. It's not a happy story, but Falomain, the son of Conchobar, does lead a group of youths. Cú Chulainn is no longer alone. He's passed through his dark point. He now has divine assistance, and he's starting to get some assistance from his countrymen as well. When he wakes up, he sorrows about the death of them, that he wasn't there to help protect them, but now he is ready to go. And this chapter in my book is entitled The Great Slaughter, and here he just goes crazy on the armies of Queen Maeve.
Yes, they describe in great detail his getup. He is rested and ready to fight, and retaliation against this boy troop being killed. And again, with the details about his armor and that skin they put on that turns to horn on their body. And eventually, he is transfigured. I mean, this is an insane preparation for battle and just launch into the killing of entire armies.
And we've seen the torque before, the warp spasm, the shift. Here it is again. The torque seized Cú Chulainn and turned him into a contorted thing, unrecognizably horrible and grotesque. Every slab and every sinew of him, joint and muscle, shuddered from head to foot, like a tree in the storm or a reed in the stream. His body revolved furiously inside his skin. His feet and his shins and his knees jumped to the back, his heels and his calves and his hams to the front. The bunched sinews of his calves jumped to the front of his shins, bulging with knots the size of a warrior's clenched fist. The ropes of his neck rippled from ear to nape in immense, monstrous, incalculable knobs, each as big as the head of a month-old child. And this keeps going for another page and a half in mine. This is the transition, the shift. And so all of a sudden, then this demon of battle that Cú Chulainn has become descends upon the army, and they don't have a chance.
The part I have to point out is that he has an invisibility cloak.
Oh, yeah.
His concealing cloak was spread about him, made of cloth from Tir Tengir, the land of promise. It was given to him by his magical foster father. He has an invisibility cloak. I love these ideas that are passed down over time. Cuchulainn has one here, and he just decimates hundreds. It is mind-boggling.
I love, though, that after this massacre, it says, Cú Chulainn emerged the next morning to survey the enemy and to display his elegant figure to matrons and maidens and young girls and poets and practitioners of verse. For he deemed neither dignified nor seemly the nightmarish form in which he had appeared the night before. So the warp spasm was so terrifying that now he has to step out and look beautiful so that the poets can describe him appropriately.
Yeah, that was weird. This is what I really look like on a normal day. It's very odd.
So Cú Chulainn is just wreaking havoc, right? He is just dominating everything. The curse isn't going to last forever. The forces of Maeve and Allele are just worried. They're getting scared. Meanwhile, they've got this guy. Fergus is a legendary warrior. He is amazing. And they're asking him, why don't you go fight him? And all along, he's been refusing, saying, no, he's kin. We have an association. It wouldn't be right for us to do it. But then alcohol one more time. Fergus gets drunk and they talk him into it. And he says, fine, I will challenge him the next day. And this encounter is great because Fergus shows up. He walks up to him with his wooden sword. He doesn't even have a weapon anymore. This is no challenge. This is nothing that's going to go well. And Cú Chulainn said, I'll just read it. You must have been given some assurance, said Cú Chulainn, to take on me with no sword in your scabbard. For, as we explained before, Ailill had stolen it. Sword or no sword, said Fergus, I wouldn't use it against you. Yield to me this once, Cú Chulainn. If you yield to me some other time, said Cú Chulainn. Done, said Fergus. Cú Chulainn retreated back from Fergus as far as Gurlach Doled, the doleful swamp, so that Fergus might retreat before him when it came to the final battle. This seems like a great outcome here. So Fergus approached him. Fergus gets to count this as a win because Cú Chulainn yielded, but he doesn't have to fight him, especially unarmed. But now Cú Chulainn has a trump card. And now at any point when he encounters Fergus in the future, Fergus owes him a yield as well.
There is more treachery on the part of the queen. They make this rationalization that all these, 27 brothers, they're all from the same parents, limb of limb and flesh of flesh. So it's like sending one guy, and they actually send them with poisoned swords. And so here, Fergus is sad. He's like, a tragedy's going to happen, the death of Cuchulainn. They're going to kill him because all it takes is one scratch. And yet somehow he wins. It's amazing.
Well, it's actually important in the way in which he wins. So he is able to block all the darts, right? So he's not scratched. So he's able to do this incredible defensive maneuver, but it's only going to be a matter of time because if one scratch gets through, he's going to die. Fergus has sent somebody to watch. So Fiacha mac Firfeba came on the scene. This is one of the Ulster exiles that's not there to participate. He's there to watch what's going on. And he just thought this was just wrong. So he says, when he saw how things stood, he drew his sword from his babe's scabbard, and with one stroke he lopped off their 29 fists, and they all fell backwards, so tight had been their grip. And so this guy steps in. He actually assists Cú Chulainn. And then he says, well, I'm in trouble because if they go back and tell what I just did, Queen Maeve and King Ailill, they're going to kill me. Cú Chulainn says, don't worry about it. No one's going to tell this story. And he kills them all. And so this man who assisted him ends up being saved.
29 standing stones were erected for them. This next one is tragic, actually.
To my mind, this is the climax of the story.
Yeah.
This is what everything has been building to. And there's a little bit after this, but this, I think, is the poetic heart of this tale. Up to this point, we've seen Cú Chulainn kill kind of common foot soldiers. We've seen him kill these great heroes under the service of Queen Maeve. We've seen him overcome treachery. We've seen him overcome poison and magic. We've seen him overcome the very goddess of battle. He's been doing all these things. And then we saw him overcome at least somebody who was a friend of his. We see him fight another one who was supposed to be a friend of his that he spared. Now, though, he is going to be challenged by his foster brother, by a man who he trained with, by a man who he loves and who has loved him, by somebody who is essentially his twin, but now they are going to have to fight. This chapter starts off in mine. Again, the men of Ireland debated among themselves as to which man would be most capable of withstanding Cú Chulainn, and who would be next to go and face him at the ford. Finally, they decided it should be the horn-skinned man from Irrstromnan, that irresistible force, that indomitable rock of battle, Cú Chulainn's own dear devoted foster brother, Fer Diad.
He doesn't want to do it, but they bribe him. They give him many things, so many promises of wealth and things. It's crazy that this all started for a bull and the wealth and prosperity of being equal. Think how much has been spent in lives and money and just stuff to even take this bull to begin with. But eventually, he does agree to at least go talk to him.
Well, but the agreement, this is so just childish. I mean, it's one of the things that we see how ridiculous this whole fight is. this whole battle is based off of nothing. And each of these individual ones is like, really, that worked? That's what got you to fight your foster brother? So, yeah, they do offer him all these things. And he says, those are great gifts and great offers. They are great, but great in all as they are, Maeve, I would rather leave them with you than go out to fight my own foster brother. Well, men, said Maeve, turning away from Ferdiad, for she knew well how to stir things up. What Cú Chulainn says is true. What did he say, Maeve? Said Ferdiad. He said, my dear, that in his province your downfall would be counted as one of his lesser triumphs. It wasn't right of him to say that, for he never found me slow to take up a challenge night or day. I swear by the gods of my people I'll be the first man at the ford of combat tomorrow morning. That worked? Really?
Yeah. Again, the pig story at the beginning, the pig keepers, they were friends. They were friendly. There's nothing wrong. They had no enmity until people started talking about the other one. This kind of undermining of trust and love in each other comes from the outside. And that is a cycle throughout this. And so Verdi is going to go.
The battle and the lead up to it is really, really well done because, again, these were friends and we learned some things about the way they were trained in war. Cú Chulainn trained under a woman warrior in Scotland, someone named Scathach. It's spelled in mine Scathach. And Ferdiad trained as well. They were like soldiers under her. They did campaigns together. They did these incredible things together. And Cú Chulainn in one of the poems here says, when we stayed with Scathach, we were never apart in courage or in war. We shared the same heart. You were my best comrade. We breathed the same air. You were dear above all. I'll miss you, I swear. I mean, it is heart-rending. This goes deep because these two warriors love each other and have loved each other, but now this has come between them, and now for honor's sake, they are going to fight, and it is impressive. But then again, the way they fight is kind of cool.
They keep deferring to the other, like, well, you get to pick the weapons till nightfall. I think Ferdia gets to choose first, and whatever they choose, they are evenly matched. The next day, Cú Chulainn picks the weapons. They fight all day, and they are evenly matched. It is this back and forth, just like with the pig keepers. They're even. They are even. They are even. And round they go. They don't even want to be fighting, not really. And yet they continue in this, I keep almost using the phrase pissing contest.
Appropriate. That actually fits here. It's one of those things where when they start, there's this kind of anger. Because on the first day, they do kind of trade insults and kind of go at it. But then that night, they share everything. Cú Chulainn has doctors that are coming ministering to his wounds. And he sends them to Ferdiad to heal his wounds. And Ferdiad has all this food and wine and drink. And he sends the same to Cú Chulainn. So they're sharing this kindness to each other. Initially, it's so that one won't say that, well, you had an advantage, but it becomes more than that. And they remembered their old friendships. And every night, they're a little less mad at each other until by the end, as they're getting towards the end, Cú Chulainn says in another one of his poems here, food has not passed his lips, nor was the man ever born to high king or shining queen, for whose sake I do you harm. And Ferdiad answers, Cú Chulainn, I know well that Maeve betrayed us to the hilt. You will win victory and fame, and do so free of all guilt. And Cú Chulainn finishes it. My brave heart is a dead weight, my soul near torn from its roots. I'd welcome any other fate than to fight you, Ferdiad. But they do keep fighting. And on the final day, it is Cú Chulainn who gets to choose. And he asks to fight in the ford. Rivers are such an important part of Celtic storytelling. It's a place where the veil is thin between our world and the world of fairy. And there is nobody better in a ford fight than Cú Chulainn, not even Ferdiad.
Well, and Cú Chulainn prompts his charioteer to some action. And because he's watching Ferdia do his feats of strength, like Cú Chulainn was practicing earlier, they do practice every day, seemingly. And Cú Chulainn is impressed by this. And he says, look at the 1,000 feats Ferdia does on high. Multiple, miraculous, thrilling. He is going to use them all on me today. So here's what he tells the charioteer. If my defeat seems near at any time, you must abuse and insult and mock me to make my anger rise. Make me mad. He's trying to bring out that what is yours called? The torque, the warp spasm, that anger at this man. If he's about to lose, he's like, please make me mad.
And they fight, and it goes back and forth. And this is finally a warrior worthy of Cú Chulainn. They are so evenly matched. But as it progresses, it says they were deep into sword fighting when Cú Chulainn let his guard drop. And in that instant, Ferdiad sank his ivory-hilted blade into Cú Chulainn's breast, and the blood sprouted over his belt to run red into the ford from the warrior's body. Cú Chulainn could no longer endure Ferdiad's overwhelming onslaught of cut and thrust, and he called out to Leg for the Gai Bolga. This was what the Gai Bolga was. It was cast downstream from him and was thrown from the fork of the foot. It made a single wound when it entered a man's body, whereupon it opened up into 30 barbs, and it could not be taken from a man's body without the flesh being cut away from around it. And so this came to Cú Chulainn. This is something he kicks with his foot into him. And it says, Cú Chulainn caught it in the fork of his foot and launched it at Ferdiad, and it went through the double-thick apron of double-smelted iron and broke in 3 the sheet of rock the size of a millstone, and entered the rear portal of Ferdiad's body to fill every nook and cranny of him with its barbed. That's enough for now, said Ferdiad. That's done for me. And it was a powerful throw from your right foot. It wouldn't be right to die by your hand.
Cuchulainn runs to him and carries him out of this water, and he is crushed and sad. This is his friend and fellow brother in fighting in war. This is a devastating victory.
Meanwhile, Leg, his charioteer, is worried. He says, get up, little Cú. The men of Ireland will come to attack us, and they won't be interested in single combat now that you have killed Ferdiad MacDaman. Why should I get up, my friend, he said, and this one fallen by my hand. Again, he is broken. He is crushed over this. He has conquered. He has won, but at what cost? And this is beautiful and horrible at the same time. This is an incredibly powerfully told scene.
This is one of the bits of poetry from Cuchulainn. It says, Ferdia, dead by their deceit, our last meeting I lament. You are dead, and I must live to mourn my everlasting loss.
In many ways, I think you could just end the story now. I think that's the high point. That's the emotional apex of this story. But the story keeps going. And we get these kind of interesting insertions here that don't seem to flow quite as well with the overall fate of the story. We have this entire tale of a guy named Kethern. Is that in yours?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the Ulster warriors wakes up.
Ulster rises from its pangs. That's what mine says. So this new warrior shows up, and Kethern is bold, and he gets hurt. But Cuchulainn has pity on him. He keeps trying to help him. But this guy keeps killing the healers.
Yeah, I don't approve of this, because in my translation it says doctors, which I am a doctor, and yeah, they don't fare well. Every one of these doctors comes up to him and he just keeps killing them.
Yeah, the doctors, the healers say, you won't survive this. And this warrior, Kethern, says, neither will you. And he punches them and they die. He doesn't like this news.
No, the last doctor, the great healer, manages to calm him for a little while, and they explore his wounds, and they use it as a story device to explain how he got his wounds. So he'll talk about, a wound in the head, and he'll say, oh, I got that from this guy that looked like this. And then Cú Chulainn will say, oh, that's that warrior. And so it is an interesting tactic. But yeah, the doctors don't fare well.
And Cuchulainn's like, would you stop that? Stop killing the healers. But yeah, this last one plays it well. I forget the end of Kethern's story. He's going to die.
Yeah, he gets the same choice in many ways as Cú Chulainn does. The final doctor basically says, look, we can treat these, but you got to take it easy. You got to rest, and then you could probably live for at least a year and maybe longer, depending what you do. Or I can patch you up now and you can fight, but you'll be dead tomorrow. And he says, patch me up. And so he goes on basically this kamikaze suicide run against the forces of Connacht and then dies.
Yeah, and mine has less about Cuchulainn as it goes. His drive to kill and to fight, it's just not just him anymore as the men of Ulster start showing up. These other warriors, these other leaders. And so Cuchulainn is still part of it, but it is no longer just him.
Yeah, you get this sense that things are starting to turn. So Cú Chulainn actually sends his father, a guy named Sualdam, to rouse the men of Ulster now that they're coming out of the curse. And again, it's a weird story. They don't listen to him at first. It says he falls on the edge of his shield and he's beheaded, but still his beheaded head is rousing the men of Ulster. Beheadings in Celtic mythology are again fascinating. It's a whole realm of study. There's a whole story of Bran's head that doesn't factor into this one, but it's a thing. And anyways, the forces do end up starting to gather and starting to come. And there's a chapter in mine that's titled "The Ulstermen Come Together," and again, it's this wonderful kind of description of all these forces and these great warriors. And Fergus is saying, "Oh yeah, that's King Conchobar. That's this guy. That's this other warrior." But at the end of it, there's a great line. I love the way this is translated. So all these Ulstermen have gathered, and the army is now ready to take on Maeve and Ailill. And Fergus has been describing it all, but at the end of it, he says, "What you saw was a people coming together." I think that's beautiful. I mean, I'm not Irish, I'm not an Ulster man, but if I were, I mean, I would consider getting that tattooed, right? The idea of unity, the idea of a people coming together. They've been through pain, they've been through suffering. There was this great hero who bought them time, but now the men of Ulster are there to fight.
The last chapter of my book is called The Last Battle.
Yeah, same with mine. Well, the final battle in my translation. But we're kind of through the Cú Chulainn story. Here in this last battle, we do get into some triads, which are fun. So there's the Irish triads, the Irish army as described with these different groups that are fighting. Here we finally get to see Fergus unleashed. Fergus in battle is unbelievable. I mean, literally, he is like, Ailill gives him his sword back.
Yeah, no more wood sword.
Yeah. And so he's chopping the tops off of mountains and hills, and they're saying that's why that's called this and that. But then he faces Cú Chulainn in battle, and Cú Chulainn says, "Yield to me." And he had promised, and he does. And so it's really interesting that Fergus and Cú Chulainn get to both be awesome in this story, but they both get to survive and both get to walk away with honor, which is, I wasn't sure how they were going to pull that off. It seemed like that was going to be the big battle between Fergus and Cú Chulainn, but it's not, and I kind of like that. And so Cú Chulainn does come across Maeve at the end. But again, this is all kind of adolescent child humor because when he approaches her, she is just starting her period. And so he ends up letting her go, and it's a whole scene. But the weird thing about this story is that where it ends goes back to that white bull and that brown bull. The white bull and the brown bull fight. This is no longer the men fighting. These are these two great bulls of Ireland. And they go at it. And so many of the geographical features of Ireland described in the story are the remnants of that battle, where their hoofs hit, where their horns hit. And then one ends up killing the other, but in doing so is itself slain. And so the end of this cattle raid is not the gain of the brown bull. It's the death of the white bull and the brown bull. And so what do we have when it's all over? Ailill and Maeve are equal in their wealth.
The end. Epic tales are their own flavor of things. Very individual, and you can feel the difference in time and culture and what they valued really. And man, they didn't have this same idea of a happy ending. You know, this idea of a real wrap up of a story. I always feel that in really any epic tale, it's a complete cycle. And so it tends to end with death because it's the telling of an entire story. And this ends with death. And yes, you are right. They are equal in the end at some great cost. I just think it's interesting. Like we mentioned that the parallels to other epics. Do you have, I don't know, things that you see in parallel to other ones? Like you've mentioned some things, but what in this strikes you in parallel with, like, say, the Iliad?
I think the Iliad is the closest parallel I see to this one, although there are parallels to all other great epics. And when I'm talking epics, I'm talking about things like Iliad, Odyssey, the Aeneid, the Epic of Gilgamesh, these ancient tales of usually a warrior hero surrounded by other warriors and heroes on some sort of quest journey goal, right? There's something he has to do. What makes an epic is the presence of that hero, and it's his greatness that we kind of watch and follow. But what makes an epic, I think, is also the people around him. You know, if Cú Chulainn had only killed insignificant people, right, weaklings, that's not an epic tale. It had to be Ferdiad, right? It had to be these other great warriors to show his greatness. I think there's something too about the mix of the gods in it that's important. There's has to be, because if you have this hero that basically no man can touch, there has to be some challenge. And that challenge can only come from things higher than humanity. And so these epic tales tend to show the way we interact with the divine in various ways, or at least the various pagan cultures thought we interact with the divine. And I think you can get a lot out of that. There are so many things that are similar. I mean, the choice for glory and a short life, the way that kind of mercy and strength have to go together. That if there's no mercy, we kind of resent the strength, but mercy without strength is just weakness in these stories. Pages and pages and stories could be told about the comparisons between them. I think the Iliad is the most direct comparison if you're looking for another one to read. And at some point, I'm sure we'll do the Iliad. How strange is it that we did the Irish one first, that we didn't do the classic ones first? But
well, and I was thinking about Beowulf with this one because of that really tragic element of this hero. They are not the same story, but just in the idea that Cuchulainn does these amazing things, truly amazing. And yet there's tragedy with it. There is not just physical hurt with it, but emotional hurt with it. And he comes out of it sad, that just devastated. And I was very happy that he did not confront Fergus, this give and take. That is a risky deal to make in a battle. Like, you will defer to me and then I have that on you for later. But that they both uphold that is a good thing. And I think there needs to be that kind of nobility of action, something morally high to reflect something good about this person. Otherwise, he's just a savage murderer.
mm-hmm.
But so are the armies that are attacking their land. So the novelties in it are strange and hilarious. The pangs of the Ulstermen.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, well, and the Irish have just always been such brilliant storytellers because there's always humor and pathos and tragedy and greatness and song and poetry and funny stories and simple stories and complex stories and it's just I think it's a masterclass in storytelling in many ways.
Yeah, so picking this one up, I think is hard. It always helps for me to read something in parallel from it from people who've studied it far more, because there's a lot of those, because this has been around and it has had so much impact on people and culture. But the pig keeper story at the beginning is just the short version, I think, that really echoes the main aspects of this story, this kind of cycle of pride and abilities and strength and how that can kind of get twisted when you're contesting it against someone else that maybe used to love them, and kind of that toxic cycle if you participate in it. Very interesting though.
Yeah. Well, I think to wrap this up, if you are okay with it, I would like to read a very short passage out of another epic tale. This is from G.K. Chesterton's The Ballad of the White Horse. And I love this passage, and I think it's appropriate because he's describing this great Celtic Gaulish character that King Alfred is trying to gather into his host. This has always struck me as a beautiful picture of kind of the flavor that we saw in the story we just read. So I'm going to read this. Last of a race in ruin, he spoke the speech of the Gaels. His kin were in holy Ireland, or up in the crags of Wales. But his soul stood with his mother's folk. They were of the rain-wrapped isle, where Patrick and Brandon Westerly looked out at last on a landless sea and the sun's last smile. His harp was carved in cunning, as the Celtic craftsman makes, graven all over with twisting shapes like many headless snakes. His harp was carved in cunning, his sword prompt and sharp, and he was gay when he held the sword, sad when he held the harp. For the great Gaels of Ireland are the men that God made mad, for all their wars are merry, and all their songs are sad. And with that, we'll turn the page, and we hope you join us for the next chapter.